Upon graduation, I had a farewell hookup with Jiang Yufeng. Afterward, he habitually handed me a cigarette. Teasingly, he said, "In the future, when I look for a wife, I definitely won't pick one who smokes a post-coital cigarette." My throat tightened as I asked him why. He said, "Ji Qing, I prefer innocent girls." I fell silent for a long time, then cut off all contact with him. When we met again, he had become my new boss. To avoid awkwardness, I voluntarily submitted my resignation, but he cornered me in the office. 5 years. Let's do it one more time. I lowered my gaze.
No.
I have to pick up my kid from school. The air fell silent. Jiang Yufeng stopped his movements too. I tried to stand up from his lap, but he held me down, immobile. His once blazing, fervent eyes dimmed. A crack appeared in his usual calm, composed expression. He gritted his teeth. "How old is the child?" I paused for a moment before quietly answering. 3. 3, not 4. And we had been broken up for 5 years. This child had nothing to do with him. Obviously, Jiang Yufeng knew that too. I tried to stand up again. This time, the big hand around my waist didn't stop me. As I pushed the door to leave, he spoke again, his voice laced with suspicion. "I remember that on your personal information, it says you're unmarried." My steps faltered. Steadying myself, I turned back calmly. "We just got our marriage certificate not long ago." "Just got it and the child is 3 years old?" I nodded, looking completely unruffled. "Yes, we had a shotgun wedding." Jiang Yufeng didn't respond. His sharp gaze swept over the cheap wedding ring on my hand, and he sneered disdainfully. I didn't feel embarrassed. I showed it off boldly, nearly poking it into his eyes. Sensing he was about to lose his temper, I quickly escaped. Back home that evening, I let out a heavy sigh of relief. Sometimes, lies are the most effective when dealing with unexpected trouble. I bought the ring yesterday at a $2 shop. Cheap and effective, I figured. It should be enough to erase any lingering feelings Jiang Yufeng had for me. Sure enough, my resignation request was approved the next day. HR personally came to inform me that afternoon. I could leave after completing the handover within a week. Normally, resignation requests take a month, but I only needed a week. It was obvious whose idea that was. I nodded and began to hand over the remaining work to the intern. The new intern was well-behaved and enthusiastic, at least when I was mentoring her. I never had to pay for breakfast or afternoon tea. As evening approached, and it was almost time to get off work, Wei Yu suddenly spoke up sheepishly. "Ching ching, sis. Can I leave a bit early tonight? My boyfriend invited me to dinner." I hesitated. Not that I couldn't let her go, but tonight I also needed to leave early to pick up my daughter from school. Seeing that I hadn't spoken for a while, she got a bit anxious. She clasped her hands together and kept pleading. I found it both funny and exasperating, so I finally agreed. "It's fine, go ahead." She thanked me excitedly and started packing up. "My boyfriend will be down soon." I was surprised. "He works here too?" Wei Yu looked mysterious. "No, he's..." Before she could finish, she was interrupted by a deep, magnetic voice. "Ready to go?" My figure froze for a moment. If this voice were one I had never heard before, I might have looked up out of curiosity. But unfortunately, over the past 5 years, this voice had been haunting my nightmares. In the dark nights when I could barely fall asleep with the help of medication, Jiang Yufeng's words echoed in my ears over and over again. "Ji Qing, you're too well-behaved. I'll lead you astray. Ji Qing, learn to smoke. Girls look cool smoking. I want to see a different side of you." Seduced by those coaxing words, I fell for it. I learned, too. From my sophomore year onward, I went from being Jiang Yufeng's admirer to his bed partner. Later, I beat out all the senior and junior girls and successfully became his girlfriend for 3 years. The day he accepted my confession, the weather was terrible, wind howling fiercely. At that time, he had just finished a date with a senior girl from the same year and dropped her off at the dorm. His car was parked right under the girls' dormitory building. One of his hands, with distinct knuckles, held a cigarette and lazily rested by the window, as if he was resting with his eyes closed. The ashes from the cigarette scattered in the wind, floating midair. I threw on a coat, went downstairs, and knocked on his car window. Banking on that unique special treatment he gave me, I confessed my feelings. At that moment, even the wind seemed to slow down deliberately, like a movie hitting pause. I waited quietly for his answer. Jiang Yufeng turned his head to look at me, pulled out a cigarette, and brought it to his lips. His pitch-black eyes were bottomless, yet held a fatal allure. As if possessed, I held it in my mouth, my moist lips touching his. He didn't pull his hand back. His teasing expression gained a hint of acquiescence. He only said, "Good girl, not so good anymore." At the time, my heart and eyes were drowning in his gaze, and I didn't understand the deeper meaning behind those words. It wasn't until graduation day, when he invited me to the hotel for the last time, and our last meeting. After a round of pleasure, he deftly handed me a cigarette. When I look for a wife, I will never choose one who smokes after sex. At the time, I forced down the sob rising in my throat and asked him why. Jiang Yufeng laughed. White smoke rose from his fingertips. His tone was more serious than ever before. Ji Qing, I like pure girls. Tears swirled in my eyes, causing me to forget to breathe for a moment.
Ha, pure.
He said he liked pure. But once, he had also insisted that I was too pure and too good, making it impossible for him to make a move. Only now do I understand what he meant back then. Because I was no longer obedient, I was automatically included in his playable category. I pulled myself out of the memory, my expression returning to calm. Wei Yu turned around excitedly, grabbed her bag, and jogged over, then suddenly looked back at me. Sister Qingqing, aren't you also in a hurry to pick up your daughter from school? Let us give you a ride. I was about to refuse, but Jiang Yufeng walked straight over, picked up the bag I had placed on the table, and turned ahead to the parking lot, giving me no chance to refuse. The atmosphere in the car was eerily quiet, with only Wei Yu occasionally speaking. Jiang Yufeng tapped the steering wheel casually, responding to her indifferently, but his gaze kept drifting towards me intentionally or not. Wei Yu, perhaps afraid I'd feel awkward, started making conversation. Sister Qingqing, when you work late, does your husband pick up the kids? Suddenly hearing her mention husband, I was taken aback for a moment. Then I shook my head and made an excuse. He's out of town, doesn't come back often. She had an I see expression. Then she looked at the ring on my hand, which I had bought a few days ago at a dollar store. Is this your wedding ring? It looks a bit faded, like a cheap $15 item with free shipping online. Oh, I didn't mean that. Please don't misunderstand. Wei Yu realized she had misspoken and turned to apologize to me, but I still caught the disdain and a strange sense of superiority hidden in her eyes. That's right. Compared to my dozens of yuan milk powder bag, her Hermes is clearly in heaven. I was about to speak when I was interrupted by a laugh. Jiang Yufeng reached out and touched her head, smiling with a face full of doting. All right, you didn't say anything wrong. No need to apologize. Then, he looked at me through the rearview mirror, as if chatting casually or deliberately saying it for me to hear. Poor people care a lot about face. If you speak so bluntly, aren't you afraid someone will make things difficult for you at work tomorrow? The words were directed at Wei Yu, but they were meant for me. A seemingly casual remark, laced with blatant protectiveness, and also a hint of warning to me. I pretended not to hear, and turned my head to look out the window. During the 3 years I was with Jiang Yufeng, I heard similar words countless times, saying I wasn't good enough for him. I admit it, Jiang Yufeng and I are too different. My family isn't poor, but at most we're just middle class. As for the Jiang family, they're not just wealthy. They're at the center of power. When we first got together, Jiang Yufeng made it clear to me. Ji Qing, you can be my girlfriend, but you can never be my wife. I know that. I've always known it, and I've kept my heart well guarded. I never overstepped the line by even a fraction. When feelings ran deep, I couldn't help but waver. Give it one more try, fight for it. What if it actually works? So, as graduation neared, I took the initiative to invite Jiang Yufeng. That day, he came to pick me up early and parked the car in a quiet spot on campus. The driver got out of the car on his own and waited at a distance. I was forced to turn around. The dappled shadows of the plane trees outside the window poured into the car against the sunlight, stinging my eyes so that I couldn't open them. An hour later, Jiang Yufeng was lounging lazily in the back seat. His white shirt was slightly damp, and a thin layer of sweat covered his forehead. The car window was half open, and the cold wind rushed in, dispersing the white fog from his breath. I looked at him and slowly asked the question, Jiang Yufeng, do you love me? I think, more than asking whether he would marry me, I cared more about whether he had ever loved me. He looked at me, his mocking eyes showing rare seriousness. Graduation is coming. In that moment, I understood what he meant. Graduation is coming, so it's time to break up. The car stopped at the kindergarten entrance. I pushed the door open and got out, and my daughter, who was standing at the gate holding her teacher's hand, spotted me and waved happily. I walked up quickly, thanked the teacher, and looked down at my daughter. Sorry, Mom was late today. Did you wait long? She tilted her little face up. Pointing with her small hand, she asked, Is it because of this uncle that you were late? I was startled. Following her gaze, I turned around and saw Jiang Yufeng standing behind me. I didn't know when. His previously nonchalant expression now carried a hint of gravity and a trace of barely perceptible delight. I froze, instinctively tightening my grip on my daughter's hand. He walked up and slowly crouched down in front of her. Looking at her adorable, well-behaved little face, Jiang Yufeng's usually indifferent tone softened a bit. How old are you? What's your name? I said nothing, nor did I stop the scene. Having been together for 3 years, I knew the man in front of me well enough. If I didn't let him see her with his own eyes, he wouldn't believe what I said. I looked at my daughter with tender eyes, gently squeezing her little hand. Catching my hint, she understood immediately. My name is Jitala. I'm 3 years old. Phew. I let out a soft sigh of relief. Jiang Yufeng stared at the face that bore a striking resemblance to his own, the joy of becoming a father still unexpressed, only to have it doused by his daughter's words. The words on the tip of his tongue got stuck in his throat, unable to make a sound for a long time. My daughter was born prematurely, and because I was somewhat undernourished during her birth, she was more frail than other children her age. Besides, at that tiny stage, it was hard to tell her exact age. After breaking up with Jiang Yufeng, I blocked all his social media accounts, and he tacitly stopped following me. We were like two intersecting lines, though we once had a brief entanglement, once pulled taut. We returned to our original positions. Living in the same city for 5 years, I couldn't help but wonder if at some moment, at some intersection, that familiar car might brush past me again. But it never did. We were always on different tracks, each with our own rhythm and destination. So even under the same sky, we were worlds apart. That evening, when I got home, my daughter tugged at the hem of my clothes, looking bewildered. Mom, I'm actually 4 years old. Why did we lie? Yes, why teach a child to lie? Maybe it was to avoid trouble. Not long after our last meeting, I found out I was pregnant. I thought about having an abortion, but when I was actually lying on the operating table, I hesitated. The lingering unwillingness swirled in my mind. I admit I did feel unwilling. I thought, even if we couldn't be together, having a child connected to him by blood would be something good, right? So I gave birth to the child alone. But when I truly held that little pink bundle in my arms, I suddenly felt grateful for this decision. This was my child. She carried half of my blood. She didn't belong to anyone. She deserved to see this world. After coaxing my daughter to sleep, I received a call from the HR manager, informing me that I didn't need to come to work tomorrow. I frowned and asked whose decision it was. The other side hesitated for a moment and didn't intend to answer my question. I didn't ask further. After all, one day earlier or later made no difference to me. After resigning, I didn't look for another job. I opened a children's clothing studio, and my daughter volunteered to be my model. Thanks to my daughter's cute face and my painstakingly learned editing skills, I managed to accumulate some followers. With scattered small orders and occasional ads, making a living wasn't an issue. I could even save a bit. I thought quitting my job would mean distancing myself from Jiang Yufeng again, but it turned out I was overthinking. When Jiang Yufeng showed up with the paternity test, I wasn't surprised. Last night while I was bathing my daughter, she had a hesitant look on her face, clearly troubled and wanting to say something but not knowing how to start. I pretended not to notice and continued washing her hair. After a while, she said slowly, Mom, I saw that uncle again at school today. I didn't speak and kept going with what I was doing. As if afraid I'd be angry, she waved her hands to assure me. That uncle didn't talk to me. He just touched my hair and left. Mom, you're not angry, are you? Seeing my daughter's cautious gaze, I sighed, feeling a bit helpless. For a child, parents are everything. When Tala learned to speak, her first word was Mom, and the second was Dad, but in the end, no one could respond to her. When she was 3, she also asked me why other kids had both a mom and a dad, while she only had a mom. Faced with her curiosity, I chose not to hide the truth or lie to her. I didn't want to make excuses and tell her that her dad had just gone far away. I told her, You have a father, but your father and I chose not to be together. He might not even know you exist. You can choose to find him and live with him, but the thing is, I'm not sure if he will accept you. It was my fault for having you without his knowledge. I showed her a photo of Jiang Yufeng. My daughter is smart. Kids have good memories. That one glance at the kindergarten, she recognized Jiang Yufeng, but she chose not to approach him. The already cramped, cluttered living room felt even more crowded with one more person. Jiang Yufeng sat on the single sofa, placing the file marked as a paternity test on the coffee table. "Explain," he said. I poured myself a glass of water, my gaze calm. Explain what? How could I have gotten pregnant, or why did I give birth to the child, or why did I lie to you saying the child isn't yours? If it's the latter, it was to avoid trouble. If it's the former, then you know better than I do. The last time, 5 years ago, was shortly after graduation. By then, we hadn't seen each other for nearly a month, nor had we been in touch. Ever since I asked that question in the car, and Jiang Yufeng simply said, "We've graduated." We never met again. Oh no, we did run into each other a few times. At that time, everyone was busy job hunting, gathering in small groups to drink, chat about life, and boast. Every day was filled with endless parties, and Jiang Yufeng was the busiest of them all. But even so, it didn't affect his personal life. 3 days before graduation, half a month after we had lost contact, most of the dorm had already moved out, leaving only me and my roommate across the bed. That day, after mailing off some of my luggage and returning to the dorm, Wenling was standing in front of a mirror putting on lipstick. Downstairs, that black car I knew so well was parked. That was Jiang Yufeng for you. He never needed to hide anything from anyone, nor did he care about others' feelings. The phone on the table vibrated. She quickly picked it up. Whatever was said on the other end made a sweet smile curl at the corner of her lips. She was facing away from me while on the phone, yet I could still hear his voice clearly. I tried to ignore it, but his gentle tone still stung me. After hanging up, Wenling turned around and met my gaze. The smile in her eyes grew even more unrestrained when she caught the expression on my face that I failed to hide in time. As she left, she said, "Ji Qing, you've had him all to yourself for 3 years, and I've been coveting him just as long. Now that you've broken up, don't act like I'm stealing him from you." With that, she clicked down the stairs in her high heels. My hand hovered over the call page, but I couldn't bring myself to press it. So, we had already broken up, and I, the one directly involved, didn't even have the right to hear the word breakup. I had to learn it from someone else. Tears fell uncontrollably, dripping onto the phone screen. With trembling hands, I tried to go back but accidentally dialed instead. My instinct was to hang up, but in the end, I didn't press it. With a glimmer of hope in my heart, I tried again. What if he answered? But then I worried what I would say if he actually did. Should I ask him directly if we had broken up, or ask if he wanted to break up? My hand trembled slightly. A few seconds felt like hours to me. My heart raced and sank heavily. I was afraid he would answer, but even more afraid he wouldn't. After 2 seconds, the call was hung up. In that moment, a buzzing sound rang in my ears. Dazed, I heard my own heartbeat, each beat striking my nerves, dull and turbulent. That afternoon, I moved out of the dormitory as quickly as I could and never contacted Jiang Yufeng again. About a week later, we met at a graduation party. He was with Wenling. There were occasional murmurs in the private room. I pretended not to hear, ate in silence, and occasionally responded to small talk from classmates until it was time to leave. I received a call from Jiang Yufeng. It was the first time he had called me in a month. My rationality told me to hang up, but my hand instinctively pressed the answer button. Where? The familiar tone, the familiar voice. At that moment, a simple question from him was enough to shatter the high wall I had so painstakingly built in my heart. My nose tingled slightly, and I forced my voice to sound normal. Shamelessly, I told him my location. Jiang Yufeng left a curt, "Wait for me," and hung up. That night, I waited for a full 4 hours, until the lively streets were empty and the vendors had packed up and closed. Only then did I realize that hope is like a sandcastle, just a hollow shell, easily washed away and collapsed by the tide of reality. By the time Jiang Yufeng arrived, I had already waited almost 6 hours. He motioned for me to get in the car. I leaned on the bus stop sign, slowly stood up, and stiffly moved my legs. He said, "I got held up with something." Then he looked at my pale, frozen lips and frowned slightly. "If I hadn't come, why didn't you call me? Just waiting like that. If I hadn't shown up, would you have waited all night? I pulled out my phone, its screen already black. Jiang Yufeng fell silent. After a long while, I spoke. Jiang Yufeng, next time you have something going on, you can just tell me directly. The air was silent for a moment. Neither of us spoke again. That night, I didn't call out that I had seen Wenling's post, a 5-tier birthday cake sitting in the huge private room, surrounded by well-wishers, all of them classmates who had attended the party. Everyone was there except me. At that moment, what was there not to understand? No wonder they'd mumbled about having other things to do after the gathering. Told me to leave first. No wonder, just as I was leaving, Wenling shot me a smug, provocative smile and then turned to whisper something to Jiang Yufeng. No wonder, not long after I left, Jiang Yufeng called me, and then left me hanging here for hours. Everything was so coincidental, yet deliberate and blatantly exclusionary. That's just how he is. He dotes on whoever he's with to the skies. Ever since the last time Jiang Yufeng showed up with the paternity test, he started appearing frequently. Sometimes I'd run into him downstairs. Other times he'd wait with me at the kindergarten gate. He wouldn't go far, nor would he come close, just following behind like that. But I knew in my heart that this wasn't Jiang Yufeng's style. That afternoon, as usual, I finished work and was about to head out when the phone in my bag suddenly rang. I answered. It was Tao Li's homeroom teacher. Mom of Tao Li. This afternoon Tao Li was picked up by her grandmother. Are you aware of this? My head shot up. In that instant, I felt the blood rush to my head. The teacher explained, well, this afternoon a lot of people came to the school, even the principal personally received them. They specifically asked to take Tao Li away, and they even presented a paternity test. I clenched my palms, forcing down the fury in my chest. I hung up hastily and rushed out the door. At the Jiang family's old mansion, Jiang Yufeng was lounging on the sofa, with a little girl sitting quietly beside him. He had a headache. He had already been considering discussing custody of the child with Ji Qing, but then his mother pulled the stunt, and in such a grand way, by now, she probably already knew. Jiang Yufeng pinched the bridge of his nose, feeling overwhelmed. Madame Jiang was beaming at her little granddaughter, finding her adorable no matter how she looked. No matter what, this child had to be recognized back into the Jiang family. The blood of the Jiang family must never be left to drift outside. Ji Tala sat quietly, and when others asked her questions, she would only lift her head to glance at them, refusing to speak, or else she would lower her head and stare at the tips of her shoes. Until a shadow fell over her face, she raised her small face and saw a very stylish and beautiful auntie. Wenling held a small cake and handed it to her, saying, "Eat it." Ji Tala shook her head and spoke her first words since arriving at the Jiang family. Mom said I'm allergic to cream, so I can't eat cake. Wenling smiled gently. She was lying to you. Your father isn't allergic and you won't be either. Then she added softly, she was just too poor to afford cake, so she lied to you about the allergy. Now that you're back in the Jiang family, you can have whatever you want. You have your father and grandmother, and of course, you'll have a new mother too. Wenling's voice was very soft. Except for the little girl in front of her, no one could hear exactly what she said. At first glance, it looked like she was just chatting and laughing with the child. When I arrived at the Jiang family, what greeted my eyes was this scene. Madame Jiang sat upright on the sofa. Jiang Yufeng crossed his legs, his dark eyes slightly lowered, making it impossible to tell what he was thinking. Wenling held her daughter in her arms, her brows curved gently, her expression tender. Anyone who didn't know would think they were such a happy family. Tala spotted me and immediately ran over. Her soft little face finally relaxed. "Mommy," she called out. The eyes of everyone else in the room fell on me. I crouched down to gently embrace her, patting her back soothingly. She pouted, wanting to cry, but held it back. For a child so young to be forcibly taken away by strangers, anyone would be frightened and anxious. My heart ached for her. I bent down and kissed her. After calming her down, I stood up, putting my daughter behind me, and began to settle the score. If this happens again, I will call the police directly. Madame Jiang slammed her cup heavily onto the table and let out a cold laugh. Who do you think you are? I'm picking up my own granddaughter. Do I need your permission, an outsider? My daughter flinched and hid behind me in fear. I patted her head to reassure her, then looked her straight in the eye. You said it yourself, I'm an outsider. So doesn't taking away a child born to an outsider without permission count as kidnapping? She was so angry she couldn't speak, her face turning ugly. Wen Ling quickly stepped forward to help calm her down. Aunt Jiang, ease up. This child isn't just hers, she's also a Feng's. She gave me a gentle smile. Miss Ji, after a Feng dumped you, you secretly gave birth to the child. I understand it was because you loved him. But then you went to work at his company, staged those chance encounters to make him discover the child. Wasn't that intentional? Now that he's acknowledged the child, you insist on taking her away, making her live a life where she can't even afford cream. The child isn't a bargaining chip for you to climb up. Back then, you interfered between me and a Feng. Seduced him to be with you. I've already let that go. But why can't you even spare a child now? In her description, she was the righteous girlfriend who stepped back for love, while I became the scheming woman who stole someone else's boyfriend, got dumped, and then refused to give up, trying to use a child to climb the social ladder. I looked at her coldly. Those words are only good for fooling yourself. Seeing that I wouldn't budge, Mrs. Jiang slammed the table and roared, "This child is the bloodline of the Jiang family. Let's see if you dare to take her away. You're nothing but a disgrace, even having a child out of wedlock. What good can the child learn from you?" The daughter was so scared she started crying. I held her tightly in my arms, gently stroking her back. Wen Ling stepped forward, bent down, and waved at Tala. "Don't be scared, Tala. Come to mommy." For a moment, the pent-up rage in my chest could no longer be contained. I raised my hand and slapped her across the face. I lifted my chin and looked down at her hypocritical face, my voice calm and slow. "Whose mother are you?" Wen Ling covered her slapped cheek with a look of disbelief. After she realized, she wanted to hit back, but her raised arm was suddenly grabbed by a large hand reaching out. Jiang Yufeng's dark eyes flashed with coldness, and he coldly shook off her hand. Wen Ling staggered back 2 steps, saying nothing, just staring at me with piercing eyes. I didn't care. I turned around, picked up my daughter, and walked out. As I stepped through the Jiang family's front door, Jiang Yufeng's car was already parked outside. He opened the door, raised an eyebrow slightly, then after a few seconds of silence, withdrew his gaze. "I'll take you both back." I stood still without moving. He repeated himself patiently. I looked around. It was indeed hard to get a taxi here, so I stopped being fussy and got into the back seat with my child. After arriving home, I made an excuse to send my daughter to her room, intending to confront Jiang Yufeng. He seemed to sense it, standing outside without leaving. When he saw me come out, Jiang Yufeng raised an eyebrow. He casually stubbed out a cigarette and tossed it into the trash can. Before I could speak, he interrupted with a sudden sentence. "Let's get married." I was stunned, only realizing what he meant after a moment. After a few seconds of silence, I asked back, "Because of Tao Le?" Jiang Yufeng slowly raised his eyes to me. "If I say no, would you believe me?" I shook my head, clearly not believing. He let out a scoff. "That's what matters. Regardless of her intentions, my mother now knows about Tao Le. She won't allow a child of the Jiang family to be left out there. What happened today could happen often in the future, and she even has ways to make sure you never see the child again. You have only 2 options now. Either marry me, or face the risk of losing Tao Le at any time. If you want to take this to court, I advise you to give up that idea right now. She has plenty of ways to deal with you. Besides, Tao Le will receive a better education in the Jiang family and enter a top-tier school. For the child's sake, you should know what to choose." Jiang Yufeng's words were like a heavy shackle, firmly trapping me in place. Yes, even though I didn't agree, I had to admit he was right. A powerful family, like the Jiangs, would surely raise the child well. So, what was I hesitating about? Regardless of Jiang Yufeng's motives for proposing marriage, the fact was that I couldn't escape. Time ticked away, and he stood nearby, looking down at me quietly. I lowered my eyes and stared at the ground. After a moment, I looked up and asked him seriously, "Jiang Yufeng, will you be good to the child?" A flicker of confusion passed through his eyes, and then he suddenly smiled. He seemed amused by my question. "Ji Qing, what kind of person do you take me for? That's my daughter too. Do you think I would mistreat her?" I nodded. "Then I'll do as you say." Then I turned and closed the door, shutting out everything outside. Naturally, I missed the smug, enigmatic smile on Jiang Yufeng's lips. Jiang Yufeng moved quickly. The next day, my daughter and I were brought back to the Jiang residence. However, it wasn't the old Jiang mansion, but a newly purchased villa by Jiang Yufeng. At first, my daughter wasn't used to it and refused to speak to him. Jiang Yufeng wasn't a patient man either. After brazenly trying to talk to her twice and seeing that Taolo wouldn't respond, he stopped making the first move. Jiang's mother came to cause trouble a few times, but couldn't even get through the door. She was blocked by Jiang Yufeng each time. The last time she came, the argument was loud. Jiang's mother disagreed with him marrying me, but Jiang Yufeng seemed determined. No one could change his mind. In anger, she smashed another set of teacups and pointed at his nose, scolding, "I told you back in school, that kind of woman is just for fun. She's always putting on an act. She'll never set foot in our family's door. But not only did you bring her home, you even had a child with her, and now you want to marry her. Are you trying to piss me off?" Jiang Yufeng expressionlessly lit a cigarette, smoking it slowly, a chill settling deep in his eyes. "I listened to you back then. Chose to break up with her. Now I regret it. If you can't stand her, don't come anymore." This argument ended with his mother slapping him across the face. At the table, I happened to glance at the red mark on his face, but pretended not to notice. Jiang Yufeng shot me a look, pressed his tongue against his cheek, and sneered, "You've got no conscience now." I laughed too, threw my conscience to the dogs. Jiang Yufeng caught the insinuation, but didn't call me out on it. He pulled out a document and handed it to me. I opened it and skimmed through it. It was our daughter's transfer paperwork already processed. The enrolled students were all from wealthy or prestigious families. In this school, she'd have a better future. I nodded and sincerely said, "Thank you." Thank him for taking responsibility for our daughter's future. That way, I could at least feel a bit more at ease. After the meal, Jiang Yufeng recommended a few wedding planning companies to me. I frowned. "You're holding a wedding?" He took off his jacket and sat down on the sofa. Correcting my wording, it wasn't I but we. I casually flipped through a few and pointed at one, saying, "This one." Then I fell silent. Hold a wedding? Was that necessary? Jiang Yufeng glanced at the one I picked, narrowed his deep eyes, his gaze turning colder for a moment before returning to normal. "Forget it, there's plenty of time later." The wedding was set for half a month later. As soon as the news came out, it caused an uproar. Former classmates and friends called me to send their blessings, but I didn't answer a single one. I focused on accompanying my daughter. During that time, I said countless good things about Jiang Yufeng to her. She went from resisting at first to gradually accepting the presence of a father figure in her life, accepting the current living environment. Occasionally, she would call Jiang Yufeng Dad. The first time he heard that address, Jiang Yufeng was stunned. His usual indifferent and lazy expression showed a trace of bewilderment for the first time. But he quickly recovered, holding our daughter in his arms and clumsily feeding her. She didn't mind him and ate it all, giving him face. After a while, my daughter lifted her little face and gave me a sweet smile. "Mom, is this what you wanted?" At that moment, I was stunned. If this is what you wanted to see, Dora can do even better. I thought she didn't know anything, but in reality, the one who couldn't see clearly had always been me. A week before the wedding, I received a call from an unknown number. There was no sound for a long time. Just as I was about to hang up, a voice suddenly spoke. "Now, should I call you Mrs. Jiang or Sister Qingqing?" It was only then that I realized who it was. Wei Yu, Jiang Yufeng's ex-girlfriend, who used to be my intern. I didn't want to have much to do with her. "Is there something?" She let out a cold laugh. "Do you think he really loves you? He's just after novelty. Ji Qing, you're really cheap. At the company, you seduced him so much that he made excuses to pick me up from work just to see you. Even after you quit, he married you, an old woman who's had a child. You." I didn't listen further and hung up directly. I turned to look at the father and daughter playing nearby. Jiang Yufeng was taking care of a child for the first time, learning as he went, and he was quite patient. He took a moment amidst his busy schedule to glance back at me. "Whose call was that?" I told him the truth. "Your ex-girlfriend," he retorted. "Wen Ling." I froze, not expecting her to be the first one he thought of. I shook my head and went back to the room. Whether it was Wei Yu, who accompanied him for 3 days, or Wen Ling, who had been entangled for years, I didn't care. After a while, Jiang Yufeng pushed the door open and pulled a key from his pocket. "The wedding dress I had specially designed for you was air-shipped this morning. Go try it on." I didn't move. He simply scooped me up by the waist and carried me to the next room, personally changing me into it. Standing in front of the full-length mirror, I looked at myself. It fit perfectly and was beautiful. A pair of large hands settled on my waist. Jiang Yufeng slowly rested his chin on my shoulder, his breath spraying against my neck. This closeness after 5 years made me uncomfortable. Instinctively, I turned my head away. Despite trying to ignore his burning gaze, I couldn't help but feel singed by it. I wanted to break free, but he held me tightly. Ji Qing, the things in the past are over. We can choose to start anew. Jiang Yufeng closed his eyes, his voice so soft I almost couldn't hear it. Forgive me. I don't want to let you go. I let him pick me up and lay me on the bed, and he took off my wedding dress until we were once again bare before each other. Afterwards, he held me in his arms and lit a cigarette. White smoke swirled, just like that time in the hotel. I sat up, took the cigarette from between his lips, and took a deep drag. He looked at me with a smile. Want to smoke? Wait for me. I'll go buy some women's cigarettes for you. The mockery in my eyes deepened. So this was the difference between love and not love. At 2 in the deep night, 2 cars drove out of the villa one after the other. However, one was heading to the convenience store, and the other to the airport. A year later, I settled down in Sacheng and opened a children's clothing store. In my free time, I still design clothes, but after making them, they were all stored deep in my closet. Across the street from the shop, in a coffee shop, a grown-up and a child stared straight at the woman opposite. Jiang Tala sipped her milk tea and asked curiously, Dad, why don't we go in? We're always peeking at Mom from here. Jiang Yufeng pinched the unfinished cigarette but with his fingers. Your mom doesn't want to see us. Jiang Tala shook her head and replied with a grin. No, she just doesn't want to see you. The end.